Welcome to the third episode of the RP-1 series. I'm going to start things off by explaining how stupid I really am. This is the basic design of a rocket engine. If we open these valves, our fuel flows into the main combustion chamber and the engine ignites. But this is a horrible design because the pressure in the engine is higher than the pressure in the fuel lines, meaning that the hot exhaust from the engine is just going to flow backwards into the fuel lines, possibly breaking them and stopping our rocket engine. One solution is to use high pressure fuel tanks so that our fuel is at a higher pressure than the engine, so that when the engine ignites, all the exhaust goes out the back. Another solution is to use a complex series of pumps which are powered by a smaller rocket engine and a turbine, so that when we open the valves, the fuel flows through the pumps and becomes pressurized. Then the high pressure fuel flows into the small rocket engine, powering a turbine which powers the pumps, and then the main rocket engine ignites to provide thrust. What I've been doing this whole time is using high pressure fuel tanks on pump fed engines. But this isn't ideal because high pressure fuel tanks are thicker than normal fuel tanks. So they weigh more than normal fuel tanks, which means that a third of our delta V was just gone for no good reason. Oops. The first thing you're going to see is me trying to figure out where this launch pad that I just built is. Now, this launch pad is bigger than our normal one, and it took me a little while to realize that we really just have one launch pad that magically changes shapes. Alright, now with normal, low-pressure fuel tanks, it's time to complete that 3,000 kilometer downrange contract. You can kind of see the new launch pad there. The rocket actually started going so fast that the front nose cone got burnt off. This is okay because the avionics is right behind that nose cone, and we didn't actually get going quick enough, low enough in the atmosphere for the avionics to burn off. So we're kind of threading a needle here. Pretty far ways, and it should definitely be 3,000 kilometers. We're going to warp tapoapse, we're going to look around, and warp down, and there we go.
Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for.
Alright, here I am prepping for another air launch until I realized that I didn't have any trained crew, so then I had to go wait for them to do training. Alright, now that we're on the runway, here we are, prepping to be air launched. I'm going to fire up the rocket engines, pitch up. Our goal for this mission is to both reach 25 kilometers altitude and hopefully reach a speed of 600 meters per second. But on my way to 25 kilometers, I accidentally hit 600 meters per second anyways, so we really got both those contracts out of the way. On my way back to the Space Center, I realized I was a bit long. I tried to do some S-bends to kind of bleed off some speed, but I just decided to go around and land on the runway from the west. Now the landing was a little bit late, so we kind of skidded off the end of the runway, but it was okay because nothing got damaged. I just wanted to show this rocket I've been working on. It's going to send a film camera and other science stuff up above the atmosphere, so we're going to tool this rocket. It's going to cost about 25 grand. And we're back on the runway once again. Once we got air launched, I'm going to pull up those gear and turn on that rocket engine. Now, this mission is a weird one. We're going to have to hit a certain altitude at a certain speed. But luckily, it was a pretty easy contract to complete. I also tried doing a 900 meters per second velocity contract, but that didn't quite work out. So then we just glided back to the Space Center. Once again, waiting to be air launched. We're gonna turn on SAS. Now we're gonna pull up the gear and our rocket engine won't ignite.
Oh my god.
Oh, hell no.
Looks like this mission's gonna be a failure, so I just coasted back down to the ocean so that we could deploy our chutes and hopefully get safely home. Now, for some reason, it looks like rocket engines always get destroyed when they touch the water. I don't really know why this is, but there you go. Here's the next generation of our plane, call it the Extra Deadly 5, and it's actually jet powered by these 3 massive turbojets that are actually most of the length of the craft. And I'm really proud of this thing. I think the colors look great, I think the wing design looks great, and it flies way better than the current plane. I'm gonna tool the plane, and then I'm going to build one. All right, now we're gonna prep to launch another one of our old aircraft because the new one is still being built. So we're gonna launch it, then we're gonna turn on SAS, get ready to be air launched. All right, we're gonna pitch up for our rocket engines. This contract is similar to the last one, except instead of just having to reach 15 kilometers after each 20 kilometers, that's no big deal. I've gone the 20 kilometers before. Once at 20 kilometers, I'm gonna start pitching down, and I'm gonna try and complete that 900 meters per second contract again. Though, I'm pretty sure we're not gonna do it because this craft is really just not capable of reaching those speeds. Here I may have made a slight mistake. You see, I switched our control mode from gentle to harsh, and the moment I did that, the entire plane exploded, and all the wings fell off. Luckily, after the accident, we're still left with a massive tic tac that has parachutes on it, so our pilot is still safe. We're just gonna go down, deploy those chutes, and land safely in the water. And again, you can see that that rocket engine got destroyed. I don't really know what's up with that. All right, now we're gonna launch this science rocket that I was talking about. So we're gonna turn on that engine and fly away. All right, here we go. We're getting some good spin stabilization, and this rocket looks like it's gonna be a very nice trajectory. You can see how that those low pressure tanks let us go so much further than the old high pressure ones. Then we're gonna de-spin and release the payload. We're gonna start doing some science. In re-entry, we're using our parachutes to slow us down again. And after warping down to the ocean, we'll open our parachutes and gently splash down into the Atlantic. Here you can see we got a decent amount of science and funds from that mission. And now we're going to R&D because I want to show you where we're going to spend our funds. We need this orbital rocketry so that we can actually start going to orbit. Includes some good stuff like this heavy lifting engine or this American AJ-10, which is a nice pressure-fed engine which can be ignited during flight, which is really, really important to reaching orbit. All right, it's time to launch our next gen jet. This is going to be a really big mission for us because we haven't used jet engines before. All right, here we are on the runway. Now, this plane's a bit different than the old ones because it can actually take off from the runway. It doesn't have to be airdropped by a B-52. It can just take off from the runway at the KSC on its own. We're trying to complete a Supersonic X-Planes contract where we have to stay at a specific speed for a specific amount of time. I'm gonna turn on those engines and I'm gonna put on the brakes to hold us in one place. Then, when we start sliding, I'm gonna let off the brakes. We're gonna shoot forward. All right, look at that acceleration. And it really gets insane when the afterburners kick in. All right, now that the afterburners are on, we're gonna pull up and hopefully we're gonna take off. And oh, that was bad. That looked like it was just our drogue chute though, so we should be fine. We just may have some trouble landing. After ascending to a nice altitude where we can actually reach cruising speeds that the contract wants, we're gonna start leveling out. Now, we have to keep a constant altitude while we do this, and that's probably the hardest part. So I'm rocketing along, and we're getting pretty close. We're getting down to about halfway mark, about minute 30. And then all of a sudden, something horrible happened. You see, I kind of pitched up too much, and the timer reset. Oh my god. Now, instead of turning around like a smart person, I decided that I would just keep going forward, because I thought, I have enough fuel left. But unfortunately, this meant by the time that I had finished the contract, I was basically out of fuel. And at that point, there was no way I could have ever made it back to the Cape. Here I'm going to do a small turnaround, turning 180 degrees to point back towards the Cape. As you can see, I'm pretty much out of fuel, but you know, we're trying to try and get as close as we can. I even fired up the rocket engines a little bit more just to try and get that last bit of fuel. Then I'm gonna accept my fate, realize that there's no way I'm landing at the runway. So I coast down to a low altitude, deploy those chutes, and then we just went down to the water. Unfortunately, this meant that all 3 jet engines were destroyed. Because the way RP-1 works, this means that the entire craft pretty much has to be built again from scratch.